Greetings. Today's talk focuses on the fact that the Tesla Shanghai factory is now in production. We also take a look at the fact that the Model 3 production in Shanghai is going to start earlier than anyone expected, likely March or April, adding perhaps 200,000 cars a year capability to China and the Chinese market. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also, please note we're on Patreon. Could use your support there. We do have ads. We try to minimize that. We'd appreciate if you'd watch 8 or 10 seconds of the ad because this also is a support to the channel. Today's talk focuses on the fact that there are some interesting developments in China. The biggest news item that popped up was Tesla announced that they had planned to absorb the losses related to tariffs in China on November 22nd. Now, I was kind of surprised to learn that a company in need of cash as bad as Tesla does was in process of taking losses on every vehicle in the Chinese market as a way to make things work. And the fact is that the tariffs hitting importers is as much as 60%. So over the last year and a half, too, China and Tesla have been trying to work out a plan. And the plan that they came up with was that Tesla would build a factory and China would actually get rid of the rule that 50% of that factory had to be owned by a local entity. So China basically invented new rules to satiate or satisfy Tesla to get them to move into the market. So the developments in China have been fast and furious coming, but basically I think the Chinese situation is really interesting because it turns out that China is able to do things like build an entire 20 million person city in 1 year. So when it was announced that the 220 acres in Shanghai had been secured, I expected that the building of the new factory, they're calling it Gigafactory 3, but there's no batteries being produced there. It's just car assembly and production right now, and the batteries coming from California. But I was kind of shocked to hear, well, the other thing to note here is that if you'll recall, the tent in California was put up in a week to add to the Model 3 performance production. And if you can build a tent out permit-wise in California in a week, that's 48 hours in Shanghai. So the open question has been, what percentage of vehicles produced non-US would China count against no tariffs? Well, if you think about the Model X and the Model S, the batteries are being produced in Japan by Panasonic, and Panasonic is opening a new factory for 18650 batteries in China. The other note here is that something like 20 or 25% of the parts coming to be production of the Model X and S are being produced not in the United States. Germany and Taiwan are the primary other location for parts related to production of the Tesla vehicles. The one, portion that is being produced on site is actually body panels. So if you do global sourcing and you produce the body panels on location, you now have the ability to produce cars on site, eliminating the tariffs, which is what we believe is now the case. A couple of notes for those of you who really want to dig into this further. Please Google photos of the Tesla factory or the land in Shanghai, and you'll notice that there are some general photos of Teslas in China or Chinese people looking at Teslas, but there are no factory photos. And this factory has been in development for 2 years. The land was, and so forth was secured, and they're building a $1.5 billion plant. So the second sort of clue I thought was really interesting about the opening up of the Chinese production was it's been announced that in Europe they're now configuring cars, as in the Model 3s are being configured for European delivery. The interesting note here on this is the fact that not only is Tesla ready to produce all over Europe for people ordering, and they're being given delivery schedules starting in February, but you also had Asia sales for the Model 3 and configuration starting there as well. So what this makes clear is that Model 3s and Model X and S's will be coming from the Shanghai factory, and that production will start in the first quarter of the year. And the problem right now that we were trying to figure out is, how do you produce all the Model 3s that the battery pack would go with those battery packs from the factory in Fremont and be able to service customers in both Asia as well as in Europe? And the answer is there's no way that can occur, with the exception being of if the Chinese factory is now in production. So I think this whole thing is really fascinating, because Tesla's stock price actually moved down when it was suggested that Tesla was absorbing or taking the losses from the tariff that China was putting on cars. The issue is that what if they're stating that they're absorbing losses, but they're actually making money because there's no tariff to deal with anymore there, and therefore Tesla is in a better situation? I think this is, the only plausible answer to what's going on. What is strange, though, is the extent to which Elon Musk typically tries to highlight everything that's significant about the company a great deal, especially if it's not the semi-truck, etc. So there's a degree to which Tesla is almost operating in top secret stealth mode as this information is being rolled out into the marketplace. So the next question is, what are the implications of this factory opening? Number one, this means that China can now service Model 3 needs for China as well as all the Asian countries that might be interested in the Model 3. Number one. Number two, this means that Tesla can earn higher profits without having to push those cars through the Fremont plant, which means that they're getting more global in their operations. China deliberately asked for a gigafactory to be installed, and a gigafactory is not a production facility, but you can't build, even in China, you can't build the battery space required in 4 or 5 months. In the case of Tesla, or even in China, you can put up a tent in a couple of days and start production. But there was an open question of, if in fact Tesla can put up tent in a week, you can achieve a tent going up. And the only matter in the Shanghai plant was, at what point do the Chinese no longer have the tariffs, if all the parts are being sourced globally anyway, and then you have your local production on a limited basis? At what point did those vehicles flip from being considered Chinese or manufactured and therefore no tariff, from being an imported car? And the suggestion here, based on Tesla not worried about absorbing losses, is that it's a great situation for Tesla to now be in production in China, because they get a whole bunch of benefits from doing so. One of the benefits that we're hoping to see, but is somewhat of an unknown right now, is the fact that Tesla is having a severe parts shortage. So the fact is, China could also be a supporter when it comes to alleviating some of the parts shortages being experienced across all Tesla vehicles, because we now have a production facility. The other thing that's going on that is a unknown question mark is that Tesla has indicated that at 35 gigawatt hours, they can produce approximately somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million cars. They've achieved 35 gigawatt hours 2 years early in terms of battery production, but they're now building the automated lines for pack construction that would complement the 35 gigawatt hours that are being produced. So Tesla has been a little bit cagey about how many battery packs they can produce out of that facility. There has been no specific number stated. And so what's been suggested is that they can build 350,000 cars a year with the current battery supply that they have. But Tesla has vaguely put out what this number is, and that number is again between 350,000 and 1 million vehicles a year. So everyone is left to speculation on what that is until we actually get some responses from Tesla. For those of you who are really into the whole Chinese situation, there are some other numbers that we think are really interesting. Number one is Tesla supposedly paid $140,000 for 220 acre in the Shanghai free trade zone. Now, the current production facility in Fremont that they're targeting for 500,000 cars a year is 370 acres. So there's a question mark as to what do they do with 220 acres when the amount of cars they want to produce is where it usually takes 370 acres to produce on. So that's one question that's, I think, an unknown. The second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth questions that are lurking right now is, what about the problem of the fact that you have to have staging facilities for suppliers that have to deliver in a just-in-time manner to the factory? So yes, it's nice that Tesla got 220 acres, but in order to make that facility robust, it actually needs double or triple that space so that suppliers can lease or buy space nearby so they can get inventories into that plant and it won't slow down the production. So I really think that the 220 acres that's been articulated is way low. I think it's more like 1,000 acres that's actually needed to make sure that traffic in Shanghai doesn't destroy the inventory pace that the plant can produce at. Now, while we've been roaming in the territory of what's been going on in China, there seems to be news every week or two about new, very strong competition coming from what's being done in the Chinese miracle. As we've covered numerous times, every major city, or 24 of them, now have 2 producers of EVs, and NIO is one of the companies that's gone public on the New York Stock Exchange with a nice looking car, but BYD, until Tesla got into Model 3 production, was the #1 producer of EVs in the world at 10,000 units a month. And so the other question that's lurking in the background is what's going on with the other, let's call it 40 companies that are producing electric vehicles in other cities that haven't come forward and announced themselves yet. And we're going to find out about them, obviously, over time. But it's interesting to note that we're expecting to see their entry into the marketplace, etc. The final thing I wanted to cover is what's going to go on relative to battery production by Tesla in China, and how does it affect them competitively going forward. And something interesting occurred, which is China announced the Gigafactory would be built there, and that factory would include both car production and battery production in one site. Can't do that with a 220-acre facility. Tesla, at the same time that China had articulated this combo factory would be built, announced that instead of just producing 35 gigawatt hours in their facility in Nevada, they would actually bump this up to approximately 120 gigawatt hours being produced there, keeping all that knowledge, equipment, and technology capability in Nevada and not shipping it to China. So there seems to be a disagreement between Tesla and China about how the battery end of the production is going to occur and sort of where those facilities should be. And the answer right now is Tesla keeping all of that in Nevada. And I think from a competitive standpoint, it avoids Chinese competition entering with total copy of Tesla products in the process. So I think that in general, all that's going on in China is fascinating. I still can't believe that Tesla is taking orders for Model 3s because they actually don't have the productive capacity to meet the order demands from both China and Europe at the same time without having a running Chinese factory, which is what our conclusion is right now. And so kudos to the Chinese for rapid construction, as we've discussed. The mayor of Shanghai wants the Gigafactory at its full scale of spending $2 billion to build it out to be up and running for a 500,000 a year production facility. The only fly in the ointment that I see going on right now is the fact that with the opening up of the Model 3 production in China, or the Model X and S are being produced, but with orders being taken for Model 3, it's a disincentive both in Europe and Asia for people to buy X and S's when they could get a lower cost without tariff Model 3 instead. So this is an interesting sort of where things are going. So we're happy to be part of this news flash. Hope you guys find the logic interesting. I also hope you guys Google the Tesla Shanghai factory where you won't see anything, because it's strange how Elon will hype up and pub up and show pictures and images of some facilities, but in other cases he goes to hyper secret mode. And in the case of this factory and its photos and dimensions, this is one of those cases. And it's interesting to me how he's somewhat doing the same thing when it comes to the Tesla semi-truck. And I think what this suggests is that when really great stuff is happening that's game-changing, there's an inclination to have some secrecy about everything that's going on. And then this is just a final bar note that I wanted to share that I thought was interesting, and that is the fact that it was articulated that Tesla put $140 million in cash on the table to purchase the land for the Tesla facilities. Out of character for Tesla, they usually lease something like this, especially because they're cash short. The other thing that's fascinating is that Tesla's covenants on their debt in the United States doesn't allow them to take on more debt. But the Chinese in the local bank and / government facilities were happy to, in some way, lend money to Tesla to build this $2 billion factory without it impacting the covenants on debt that they have for the company already in the United States. So clearly they have some creative financing going on here that allows them to build this facility, and it doesn't impact the way the debt's being taken on, doesn't impact the loan covenants on all the debt that Tesla already has in place. And I really think this shows, again, the Chinese financing miracle where they can get things done that other people don't. So bottom line is, it's exciting to hear that Tesla's going to be selling in China in 3 months, the Model 3, as well as in Europe. I think this means that we're going to see a lot of sales of Model 3s that help grow the company nicely. It is fascinating to watch how it works. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. I want to say thanks for joining us. Don't forget to do your 20 leg lifts with a 5-pound weight today. Tschüss, macht's gut. Au revoir, lahitraot, choda hafez. Look forward to our next conversation focusing on Daimler and what's going on with trucks, etc. Have a great day. Bye for now.